Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages. You know, it's often thought that a lot of these major corporations out there, a lot of these legacy institutions like the Sony Corporation out there is just these unbelievable bastions of money and wealth, and that they will just never be able to have any actual consequences for their actions and the disastrous dumpster fires that they found themselves going down the DEI path. And well, of course, now that we know that Concord was a disastrous dumpster fire for the Sony Corporation and that they're currently interested in purchasing the Elden Ring publisher as well as the Souls and a bunch of manga and anime that this company Kadokawa all owns, well, it looks like after the disastrous dumpster fire that was Concord, the $500 million they lost on that game, not to mention a bunch of other stuff that they've lost over the last couple of years, it looks like they might actually be too broke to buy the Elden Ring publisher and creator out there. And boys and girls, I think this is probably a very good sign out there for a lot of the fans out there, as well as this proves once again that yes, these actions do indeed have consequences, and the blowback from all the fans, the audiences, and the gaming community as a whole really does indeed have it. These companies are not just endless bottom troughs of wealth that can just print money like crazy. They're not the Federal Reserve after all, boys and girls, and their actions do indeed have consequences beyond just screwing all of our money and inflating things. Yes, boys and girls, your voices and your opinions do indeed matter, and you are having a consequence on this company, and who knows, it might actually end up saving the Elden Ring and Souls franchise, boys and girls. Because as you can see from our dear sweet friends over here at Bounding to Comics, experts speculate Sony may need to buy all of Kadokawa, not just their anime, video game, and manga operations. And they might not be able to afford it. Yes, boys and girls, the acquisition frenzy that has been going on for so long inside of the gaming industry with a lot of these major corporations going out there and just gobbling up all of these smaller successful studios that have been actually giving us good quality games that we all enjoy may indeed be coming to an end, because these AAA corporations, these AAA studios out there have made so many disastrous dumpster fire mistakes out there that they are simply broke as an industry. And now Sony might not even have the money after the Concord disaster and all of the rest of the disasters they've had to even make another purchase out there. And that is a beautiful thing, boys and girls, because you all should take heart. You should all take a victory lap in that, because you have brought a company this, at least to a certain degree, to its knees to be able to not go out there and just gobble up anything and everything that they want. So we're going to check out this article and get into all of the juicy details. But before we do, if you do enjoy our content, hit that like button, share with all your friends, and subscribe or follow if you have not already, boys and girls, because we are grinding, we are growing, and I could not do that without every single one of you. Also, leave us a comment in the section down below. Let me know, what do you think about this? Do you think this is good news to hear that Sony is so broke now that they might actually be able to buy Kadokawa and all of this stuff might actually be saved? Or do you think they're going to end up pulling this cat out of the bag and actually be able to go out there and maybe these experts aren't so accurate as what they think they are, and this merger will still end up going through? Let us know what you think about all that in the comment section down below. Also, if you'd like to support the channel, please check out the links in the description as well. So from our dear sweet friends over at Bounding Into Comics and Ryan Pearson, experts weigh in on Sony's attempt to acquire Kadokawa Corporation, and in turn, Elden Ring developer From Software and numerous anime and manga studios. However, they warn Sony may be forced to buy the entirety of the company instead of just smaller elements, and for a cost they can't afford, along with their business rivals know they need it. And that is funny because yes, in order to continue to be dominating in the anime and the manga sphere, this is one of the reasons why Kadokawa is buying this. Plus the fact that Sony wants to buy this, as well as obviously the success of Elden Ring and the Souls franchises and everything else from these companies that put out there. So of course they want to get out there and gobble this up. As previously reported, reports claim that Sony was interested in acquiring Japanese media conglomerate Kadokawa Corporation. The company later confirmed that a letter of interest had been sent by Sony. The acquisition would give Sony control of many gaming, anime, and manga IPs via their respective studios. This includes Elden Ring, From Software, Dragon Ball, Sparking, Zero, Spike Chunsoft, and more. Further, Sony owns Funimation and Crunchyroll, which would give them control over an anime from its inception all the way through to the Western localization. And don't we all know how those go, boys and girls? Along with larger cuts of profits. However, it may not be smooth sailing, as Bloomberg's Takashiya Mozuki reports on both Sony and Kadokawa may want very different things from their sale. And this is something we've kind of heard reports on earlier from Kadokawa, that they said it was basically like, if you wanted to buy us, you had to buy absolutely everything. You couldn't nickel and dime us and couldn't nickel and piece us. And because of that, Kadokawa did put out that statement. It looks like Sony might not have the money to buy absolutely everything, because they've got a lot of other acquisitions planned for next year as well. So this could end up blowing up in their faces and not actually end up coming to fruition. Kadokawa reportedly wants everything to be sold or not at all. Meanwhile, Sony only wants to acquire specific assets from gaming, anime, and manga. The latter's value has slightly dipped due to recent scandals rising in thanks to the news of the acquisition. While Sony wants to have more IPs to support its various entertainment ventures, Mozaku reports that if successful, Sony would make billions of dollars in revenue for years to come. And that completely and totally makes sense. I mean, the Elden Ring franchise alone is very successful, as well as the Souls franchise, and the Elden Ring isn't quite a franchise yet, but who knows? We'll see what happens with all of that. But needless to say, it's one of them situations where, yeah, I mean, with the manga and the anime alone, yeah, we know what kind of market share that stuff has out there. So yeah, they would absolutely crush it. The real question is, can they afford it? Even so, the initial cost to acquire all of Kadokawa may be too much. Toyo Kazaki, a news outlet focused on Japanese politics, economics, and business, reports that Macquarie Capital Securities estimated the bid would have to be $640 billion, whatever the Japanese money is. Estimated $4.3 billion USD out there, so almost $4.5 billion to acquire all of this. In their midterm management plans for fiscal year 2026, Sony reportedly only had an investment limit of $12 billion USD per year. So this would literally take up a quarter of what they planned on investing next year, essentially what they can afford to invest in next year. But Sony is also acquiring the rights to Pink Floyd and Queen for tens of hundreds of billions of years. I.e., remember, Sony isn't just a video game company. It's not just PlayStation. They also make televisions, and they also do all that kind of stuff and produce CDs and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's the other thing they're trying to get. And I mean, Variety reports that the Queen acquisition alone could cost $1 billion, almost 23% of the hypothetical Kadokawa bid, which once again is going to mean that they don't have money to necessarily do this. And of course, we've got Armored Core as well, which is another big franchise out there. I absolutely loved Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon, and this is the last thing I want to see get screwed up by Sony and all of their activist nonsense out there as well, especially until we hear of some kind of actual purge inside of that company. I don't trust anything that comes out of Sony at all. Toyo Kazaki notes that in addition to acquiring game studios, Sony does not have a large amount of money in its pocket. They further highlight Sony has also been named as a buyer in a number of acquisition deals this year alone, but has abandoned them mainly because of price, which could be the way this one goes. Despite this, they highlighted the fact that Sony could increase their 15% shares in Kadokawa to 50% rather than a total ownership from the start. This isn't including the various pitfalls that come from acquisitions. These range from rival buyers charging in and causing a bidding war that sends Kadokawa's value way out of Sony's reach onto initial lowball offers meant to start negotiating being taken as an insult. Studios also might not get along with new bosses, among other concerns beyond a layman's scope. Sony are surely fiending to acquire Kadokawa, following numerous high-profile bombs such as Concord, and of course, all of the layoffs that came with that. They shut down that entire studio, and a friendly reminder, that cost them $500 million. They literally shut that game down in 2 weeks. It is a complete and total write-off. They lost, and they did nothing but lose money on that game. Ambry Analysis Research Director Pierce Harding explained to IGN how the acquisition would be a natural fit. He explained it in 2022. Sony acquired 14% of From Software following its long-term collaboration with the company. Yada, yada, yada. I don't really care about all of the rest of that kind of nonsense. In short, at a time where Sony is vulnerable, they are reaching for their ideal lifeline, one that could be out of their reach or drift out of reach thanks to waves made by business rivals. And let's hope that is the case, boys and girls. But because consolidation has never been anything that benefits the general audience out there, that benefits the general consumer, the customer, the gamer out there, right? We've seen what's happened to a lot of these other studios out there when they've made incredible things, they've had incredible success out there, and then what happens? They turn around, they either get garbled up by one of these companies out there, or because of the success, they end up having a bunch of cultists and activists go in there and take over their companies, and then the next thing they release is nothing more than absolute hot garbage, dumpster fire kind of stuff. We've seen this kind of happen. There's a couple of games that are coming out there in the future. I mean, I think there was the Samurai game that came out a couple of years ago, but it was like a PlayStation exclusive out there, right? Well, the next one, instead of keeping the original male protagonist, now they're going to set it 100 years later, and then of course it's going to end up having a female protagonist. So of course, as a Ghost of Yokai or whatever, that one out there. Now the next one out there is going to have a new chick, and she's going to be all wham power nonsense and taking out a bunch of big ass dudes and stuff like that. So yeah, this is the kind of thing that we see what happens. It's better competition breeds excellence. So the more of these companies there are, the more of them that are out there competing for our dollars, the harder they will have to strive, and the more that they will have to work in order to earn that and give us a good quality game. Getting acquired by a major corporation like Sony out there is going to completely and totally eliminate all of that. And hopefully, because of the disastrous dumpster fire and decisions that Sony has made acquiring companies like the one that were responsible for the Concord disastrous dumpster fire, will continue to hurt them and make it to where they cannot acquire and gobble up as much of these independent studios out there, because independence and competition breeds excellence, boys and girls. Consolidation never ends up working out very well for the consumer. So that's where we find ourselves now. Sony's broke because of disastrous dumpster fires like Concord and all the massive amount of layoffs that they've had. They are desperate to get farther into the anime and manga sphere and pick up some studios that actually make good quality games like the Armored Core 6, the Elden Ring, and the Dark Souls game. As to whether or not Sony's actually going to end up being able to pull this off, it's starting to look more and more likely that they won't be able to, because the Kodaku wants to be sold as a whole and Sony only wants to really buy pieces of it. Now, whether or not they'll actually go the path of taking in an increasing stake in the game, which would give them 50% control on the studio out there, which of course could end up having negative consequences with all of the diversity, inclusion, and equity requirements that Sony's had in the past, and which continues to go down with further. At the end of the day, we're not entirely sure how this is going to pan out, but this is hopefully a good sign that maybe this will not come to fruition, because independence and competition is what ends up working out best for the gamer and the audience as a whole out there, and that's exactly what we want. We want From Software and the rest of these companies to continue giving us good quality anime, manga, and of course video games, boys and girls, because if we don't have that kind of good escapism out there, we will end up going to all of the indies, and by all means, there's great stuff out there in the indies. We could all have a really, really good time, but I'd hate to see the legacy of Elden Ring and From Software and the Armored Core and the Souls games all end up going the way we've seen things go, like Saints Row, like what we've seen happen with Dragon Age Veilguard. I do not want that. I want those legacies protected. I want them to keep giving us good quality games out there, and Sony not getting this would be the best thing for it. So hopefully, take a little cheer, if in nothing else, boys and girls. You guaranteed that Sony is so broke right now after the Concord disastrous dumpster fire that, hey, they might not even be able to purchase Elden Ring, and honestly, I think that's best for all of us.